In this lecture, we will look at two things: an overview of the dataset on which we are going to work for the rest of this course, and also an overview of the interface. Remember, we are going to work on Microsoft Excel as well as Microsoft Power BI, and most of the things that you can do on DAX remain common between both these different platforms. The dataset has already been shared with you, and you can download it from the resources section. And this is how the dataset looks. We have three sheets: orders, returns, and people. Let's go over them one by one. In the orders sheet, you can see we have 21 columns and about 10,000 records, 9,994 to be precise. And what we have here is a dataset for a company that is selling multiple products across multiple segments in different geographic regions in the United States. Let's go over the columns one by one. So we have the order date and the ship date. So there are 4 years of data with us: 14, 15, 16, and 17. There are 4 types of shipping mode: first class, same day, second class, standard class. There are over 700 customers that we have. So we have their customer ID and customer name. There are 3 business segments: consumer, corporate, and home office. There are 49 states, 4 regions: Central, East, South, and West. After that, we have 3 categories: furniture, office supplies, technology. We have 17 subcategories. We have the product name. And finally, we have 4 columns that are quantitative. So we have sales quantity, discount, and profit. The dataset is already clean, so there are no null values, there are no errors. There is basically no cleaning that you need to do with the data. The course is more about how to write DAX functions. It is not about data cleaning. So if you want to work with your own data sets, you're more than welcome to do that. But please make sure to clean your data before you start working with DAX. In the next sheet, we have the returns data. So you can see that there are 296 order IDs where the returned value is yes. This means that there was a return for this particular order ID. And then in the final sheet, we have person and region. So we can see that there are 4 regions: West, East, Central, and South. And then each of these regions is being handled by one manager. So Anna is handling West, Chuck is handling East, Kelly is handling Central, and Cassandra is handling South. So let's not worry about people and returns for now. We will only focus on the orders dataset. The first thing I would like you to do is to simply select the data by pressing Ctrl A and then insert a table. Now it confirms that the data is from A1 till U9995, which is great. We also have our headers in the first row. So we select the option My Table Has Headers. And when you press OK, you will see that the dataset has been converted into a table. There is a new option called Table Design, and we simply want to change the table name to any name that you want. But so that we all have uniformity going forward, let's all call it HMC. And remember, once you have given the table name, please do not forget to press enter once you have given the name. Excellent. So we have converted our dataset into a table. And now what we want to do is to enable this tab called Power Pivot. Now Power Pivot is a free add-in available on Excel. But because this is an advanced feature, Microsoft hasn't displayed it for all the users. You have to go through the options and enable it. The good part is that you only have to enable it one single time. To do that, click on File, select Options, go to Add-ins, And then in the manage option, select the second option, which is component object model add-ins, also called COM add-ins. Click on go. Now there would be three power options available. We have power map, power pivot, and power view. In this course, we are going to focus on power pivot. So I would request you not to select the other two if you are not intending to use it, just to avoid any confusion. Simply select power pivot. The moment you press OK, the power pivot option will get enabled. Fantastic. So you have enabled power pivot on your Excel. Remember, this has got enabled for all your Excel files, not just the current one. But obviously, if you create something on Power Pivot and you send it to somebody else, they will also need to enable Power Pivot on their computer. Once we have this, we can click on Insert. And when we click on Pivot Table, you will notice that at the very end, there is an option called Add this data to the data model. And that is exactly what we want to do. We want to add this data to the data model on Power Pivot. Now, there are two ways of doing this, and I want to show both of them to you. One option is to simply click on Power Pivot and then select Add to Data Model. But I would recommend that an easier way would be to click on Insert Pivot Table and then select the option here called Add this data to the data model. And when you press OK, you will notice that a pivot table is created just like any other pivot table. So let me rename the sheet and call this pivot. But there is a small difference. If you look carefully, we have two options here. We have active and we have all. This means that because we have made a data model, we can now have other tables coming in, and all of these tables will become a part of our current pivot table. But we will come to that in a minute. Now, where do you see the DAX calculations? If I click on Power Pivot, there is an option called Measure. And when I click on New Measure, there is a box that opens up. And this is where you write your DAX calculations. So we're not going to write anything at the moment, but I just wanted to introduce this to you. But just experiment with a few letters and see the type of functions that you get. Now remember, some functions will be similar to Excel, for example, the length function or the uppercase. But you will also see that there are lots of functions like calculate, like filter, like same period last year, which is unique to DAX and is not available on Excel as a formula. So like I said, we're not really doing anything right now, but I just wanted to tell you that if you want to write a DAX measure, you will have to click on Power Pivot, click on Measure, and then click on New Measure. Wonderful. Now let's do the same thing on Power BI. So we will quickly open Power BI. As you can see, I have selected nothing right now. So I'm going to click on Excel and on my desktop, select my dataset, click on Open. Now, as you can see, we have three sheets with us: orders, people, and returns. Even though we are only working with the orders sheet for now, I would still ask you to make sure to select all the three like this: orders, people, and returns. But before you press load, if you look carefully, you would see that orders is coming correctly. All the headers and the values are in the right location. But people has a little bit of a problem. You notice that the column heading is not coming properly. It is not telling you person and region as the column heading. It is giving you column 1 and column 2. And the same problem is coming with returns as well. So let's cancel this. Let me go back to my data set, and we already have the orders table, which we have called as HMC. My returns, I'm going to click on Insert Table. Select the option called My Table Has Headers, and we'll call this returns. In fact, just for simplicity, I'll call this HMC underscore returns, and the people one will become, I hope you have guessed it. So insert table, select the headers, and we'll call this HMC underscore people. And let's also change it in the orders table. Let's call this HMC underscore orders. So just make sure everyone that you have done this properly. Orders is a table called HMC underscore orders. Returns is a table called HMC underscore returns, and people is a table called HMC underscore people. Save the file. And now when you go back to Power BI and click on Excel and load the same Excel, you will notice that this time you're getting an additional option for the table as well. And this is what I want you to select. So please make sure not to select the sheet. Make sure to select the table at the top. HMC orders, HMC people, HMC returns, and load it. In Power BI, there are multiple ways of creating a DAX measure, and let me show all of them to you. Let me first open the orders table. You can right click on any single field, and there are two options. One is a quick measure, the other is a new measure. So ignore the quick measure for now. Click on new measure. And as you can see, there is a formula bar and I can write anything I want. For example, I can say my measure is equal to calculate all filter. So remember, we are not really writing a formula right now. I just wanted to tell you how to write a DAX measure in both Excel and Power BI. So this is one way of doing it. If you notice, there is also an option in the Home tab called New Measure. You can do the same thing. You can click on New Measure. There is another option of doing it, which is to click on the data view in the left corner, and then you can again select New Measure. So there are three ways of doing it. You can right click and click on New Measure. You can select New Measure from the Home tab, and you can also go to Data and you can click on New Measure. Wonderful. So we have seen an overview of the interface. We have also seen an overview of the dataset, and we will continue in the next lecture.